Dr. Kellen, we've heard a lot from Dr. Fauci in recent days, including this morning. I want to go to some tape of him speaking just in the last few minutes or even in the last hour. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
You don't get full efficacy until you get that second dose. And if you allow suboptimal efficacy, you could actually immunologically select more for mutations when you do that. So that's the reason why, it may not be the case, but it gets risky. And that's the reason why we prefer to keep it on the time that the clinical trials said.
So this is Fauci responding to ostensibly the question of whether or not you can delay that second dose. What do you make of his comments? And the second dose would be delayed to give more people the first dose, and of course because of supply and supply constraints.
No, he is spot on from my perspective. I'm really happy to hear him say that because it brings some sanity back to even further chaos that could ensue. If we delay that second dose and we have a whole bunch of people with sort of partial or weak immunity, and then we have all these other new strains coming into play, we won't have a clue as to whether the new strains are overcoming the vaccine or the new strains are more lethal, or the vaccine sort of worked, but maybe not really, and it was the delay. We picked something we know that works. We need to stick to it. I share his perspective.
What about the concern that existing vaccines might not actually fight future variants if we're thinking down the road when it comes to this pandemic?
Well, that's another reason to stick to the timeline, because the more this is spread out and these variants come into play and you have partial immunity, it is a very, very smart virus. It'll select for mutations when you only have partial immunity. He's absolutely correct that over time, other mutations will come about, and hopefully new vaccines, this mRNA technique is pretty quick to develop. New vaccines will come, and this will be more or less like a seasonal flu vaccine.
At this point, do you think people who have been infected should get the vaccine, Dr. Kellen? And the reason why this is a question is because people who have been affected should have immunity to a certain extent for a certain period of time because they have the antibodies.
Right. So that's a bit of a controversial subject. At the very least, those already infected should generally wait 3 months, and it's almost like you're getting a booster. You do have some natural immunity, and it should actually be pretty good. So given that someone has been infected and they have natural immunity, there's great thought being given to, well, let other people go first when there's such a huge demand for first doses right now.
I'm wondering, when it comes to these mutations, main differences between the South Africa and Brazil mutation versus the mutation coming out of the UK and the implications around vaccination.
So by all accounts, the mutation that came out of the UK, which is now found in at least 22 states, and we seem to be adding 1 or 2 any given day, the current mRNA vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, by all accounts, seem to work for that, even though it's more contagious. The South Africa one does not seem to show the same level of immune response, at least like in test tubes. But it is felt that the vaccine provides such a robust immune response that it's likely to overcome what is right now in the test tube less antibody impact. So we're fairly optimistic that the vaccine will still work even for the South Africa and the Brazil variants. What we're even more concerned about is, well, if you get this type of mutation, and we don't do this properly,
right,
we're going to get even more lethal or more difficult mutations, and then we're starting almost all over again.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.